The snow started falling 3 days before they left her. Ivy Marsh was 11 years old when her parents drove her up to the old hunting cabin at the edge of Talcott Ridge, told her it was a family trip, and then, in the grey hush of early morning, packed the truck with everything that mattered: the food, the blankets, the generator, even her winter coat, and drove away without waking her. She woke to silence. The kind of silence that has weight. No engine hum, no voices, no footsteps on the porch. Just wind combing through pine branches and the tick of a dying wood stove. "Mom." Her voice cracked against the cold air. "Dad." Nothing answered but the walls. She ran to the window in her socks and saw only tire tracks, already softening under fresh snowfall, curving away down the mountain road and disappearing into the tree line. The truck was gone. So was the space heater. So were the sleeping bags. So was the box of canned food that had sat by the door the night before. Ivy stood very still for a long moment, the kind of stillness that comes right before a person understands something they don't want to understand. Her parents had left her. She didn't cry right away. Later, she would wonder why. Maybe some part of her had always known this family was built on something rotten, something that had been quietly rehearsing this exact abandonment for years. The hushed arguments about money, the strange insurance papers her father kept in a drawer, the way her mother had hugged her too long and too tight the night before, like someone saying goodbye. The cabin was one room with a loft, a stone hearth, and a floor of wide, uneven pine boards. The wood stove held only embers. Outside, the thermometer nailed to the porch post read 11 degrees and falling. Including, apparently, her. She fed the last of the wood into the stove, coaxing the embers back to a small orange flame, and wrapped herself in the one-wool curtain she managed to pull down from a loft window. The wind found every gap in the log walls and needled through her sweater. She thought about the 6-mile logging road between the cabin and the nearest town, about the fact that she had no phone, no coat, no food, and about 4 inches of new snow already softening her parents' tire tracks into nothing. Nobody was coming. She understood that with a cold, clean certainty. She tried the door once, just to be sure, though some numb, practical part of her already knew what she'd find. It opened onto an unbroken sheet of white, snow piled halfway up the porch rail, no footprints but her own from the day before, already smoothing over. The cold outside was a living thing, patient and enormous, and she understood that walking out there into it in socks and a shirt would kill her faster than staying put ever could. So she shut the door, latched it, and made herself think instead of feel, because feeling, right now, was a luxury she couldn't afford. She thought about her father's voice at dinner the week before, low and careful, talking about starting over and a fresh chapter in a tone that hadn't sounded like excitement so much as rehearsal. She thought about her mother crying in the bathroom with the fan running to cover the sound. She thought about the manila folder she wasn't supposed to have seen, tucked under a stack of bills, with her own name typed across the top beside a dollar figure that meant nothing to her at 11 except that it was large. None of it had made sense then. It was starting to make a terrible kind of sense now. It was while dragging a chair closer to the stove that she heard it, a hollow note under her foot, different from the solid thunk of the boards around it. She stomped again. Hollow. She dropped to her knees and pressed her palm against the wood, and that was when she noticed the seam, a rectangle scored faintly into the floor, nearly invisible unless you were looking for it, sealed at one edge with a small brass ring recessed flush into the wood. Her grandfather had built this cabin with his own hands. Her father had always said the old man was paranoid, that he kept guns and canned goods and God knew what else buried around the property in case the world went bad. Ivy had always assumed that was just one of those things adults said about dead relatives to make them sound colorful. She hooked her fingers through the brass ring and pulled. The hatch resisted, then gave with a groan of old hinges, releasing a breath of air that was, impossibly, warmer than the cabin around her. A ladder descended into darkness. She grabbed one of the matches, struck it against the strike strip, and leaned down into the opening. Her grandfather's. If you're reading this, someone needed it. Use what's here. Stay warm. Follow the creek east to the fire road. It's shorter than the main drive and it's marked with orange tags on the trees. I put this here because I never trusted anyone to take care of anyone else in this family. I hope I'm wrong about that. If I'm not, you'll be glad this is here. Ivy sat on the ladder for a long moment, the match burning down toward her fingers, and let herself cry, not from fear anymore, but from something that felt almost like being held. She hauled up what she could carry, the kerosene heater, blankets, a few days of food, the radio, the map. By nightfall, the cabin was warm for the first time since she'd woken up alone, the kerosene heater humming steadily, a wool blanket around her shoulders, a can of stew balanced on her knees. She used the hand crank radio that night, turning the dial slowly through static until she caught a local frequency and a weather report. Clear skies moving in by morning, temperatures rising. She marked her grandfather's map with the pencil from the metal box, tracing the creek line east toward the fire road. She stayed 2 nights in the cabin, rationing the supplies, keeping the fire and the heater going, listening to the wind lose some of its teeth as the storm passed. On the 3rd morning, with the sky pale and clear and the snow crusted hard enough to walk on, she packed a bag from what remained, food, water, the folding knife, the map, and set out along the creek, exactly as the note had instructed. The walk took 4 hours. She followed the orange tags her grandfather had nailed to the trees years before he died, markers meant for exactly this kind of desperate, solitary walk, though she doubted he had ever imagined it would be his own granddaughter making it. She reached the fire road cold and exhausted but alive, and 20 minutes later flagged down a truck driven by a ranger doing a post-storm check of the access roads. What happened to her parents came out slowly, over the following weeks, in police interviews and courtroom filings. There was insurance money tied to Ivy, a policy her father had taken out years earlier, one that would pay out differently, more favorably, if she were declared dead in an accident than if she simply vanished. There was a plan, half-formed and badly executed, that involved the cabin, the isolation, and a story about a hiking accident they intended to report once they were safely 2 states away. They had not counted on the hatch. They had not counted on the old man they'd both mocked for years, the one who kept guns and canned goods and God knew what else buried around the property in case the world went bad. They had not counted on the note. Ivy went to live with her grandfather's sister, a woman she barely remembered from holiday photographs. Her parents were arrested within the week, extradited quietly from the roadside motel where they'd stopped to celebrate, and eventually convicted. Her father for attempted murder and insurance fraud, her mother as an accomplice who had, in the end, been unable to give a clear, honest answer for why she'd let her only daughter sleep through the sound of the truck pulling quietly away. Ivy kept the folding knife, sharpening it herself every few months the way her great-aunt taught her, a small habit that felt less like remembering and more like staying ready. She kept the map, too, its pencil lines faded now but still legible. And sometimes, on cold nights in her great-aunt's house, she would think about that hollow note under her foot, the one small sound that had saved her life, and about a grandfather she'd barely known who had spent years preparing a shelter for a danger he could never have named, only trusted, with a certainty that turned out to be exactly right, that someday, someone in that family would, one cold day, need somewhere safe to hide.